From the time of our arrival in Aotearoa, Māori have created a unique architectural history. Our structures not only house people, but also our dreams, our fundamental needs, and our histories. So what can we tell about ourselves from these buildings? What do they say to us? It's a question I've asked myself constantly. I'm Ro Hoskins, and as a director of an architectural practice, understanding the stories held within the walls of our buildings has been a lifelong obsession. In this series, we're going to take you on a journey to explore not just our architectural structures, but also the social and cultural histories from which our buildings arise. We'll ask, what is Māori architecture? And celebrate some of our most stunning buildings. What exactly is a Kainga today? In the past, it was always a collection of whare, often clustered around a communal area or marae. Nowadays, it's more about the old place that's been handed down, holds all the memories of tupuna who have been before. So it's up to the current kaitiaki to really look after that wairua. Today, it's still about connection to the whenua, but the Kainga itself can take many different forms. I'm Ro Hoskins, this is Whare Māori, and tonight we look at the Kainga. We're on our way to Motihi Island off the coast of the Bay of Plenty. It's an island that Ngāpuhi actually invaded in 1832, but expecting reinforcements, they unintentionally welcomed a party from Ngaiterangi who promptly slaughtered them. I'm hoping I get a better welcome. When Captain James Cook passed by Motihi Island in 1769, he called it the most extensive complex of fortified village he had seen in his travels. Motihi is home to dozens of confirmed pa sites, acres of wild fennel, 20 or so permanent residents, and one very unusual home. When I studied architecture, I was classmates with Anthony Hoete, whose whānau hails from this island. Kia ora, kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora, kia ora, hop.
Anthony has a successful practice in London now, but I've come to his ancestral whenua to meet up with Anthony's dad, Aubrey, and Aubrey's twin brother, Graham, and to see the remarkable house Anthony built with his dad. The Hoete house is sited on open grassland between the sea and the Motihi airstrip. Aubrey and his whānau were born and bred on the island, and he always planned to build his retirement home here. The house features a number of unique innovations. Large centrally pivoting doors at either end of the house welcome guests arriving from either the ocean or the airstrip. The only source of electricity here is a small generator and 2 solar panels. The simple kitchen is structured around a massive cedar table suspended from the roof by a prefabricated steel angle beam, resulting in a floating structure only connected to the floor by a small waste pipe. The raised guest room extends from the large flat roof, which has a dual function as a water gathering surface and sometime helicopter pad. The Hoetes built this house as a whānau DIY project. All the materials had to be flown or barged out from the mainland. With no specialist equipment like cranes or concrete mixers on the island, the building process took a long time and attracted a lot of attention from the local population. So it was, for the rest of the people on the island, this was something pretty different, eh?
Yeah, it was something different. They think, well, what's those twins up there doing? What are they up to? Yeah, never seen a building like this before.
And they may never again.
You could be right, mate. Never again see another one like this.
So growing up on the island, you had a practical bent from a very early age?
There was no access to the toy shop on the island. You had to do something, so I started doing wooden toys and started building things. And as I got older, it just didn't go away. It was embedded in me, so I just kept on building. Basically, I had to keep quiet because I didn't want to upset my grandfather or my dad because they were workers, you know. But I always used to watch them, the way how they would cut timber and how they would use the use of nails and all that sort of, and I learned a lot just by watching them. So as time went on by, or when Dad went away, I would pinch a bit of his offcuts and try and make a little wooden boat to drag behind me down the road or something like that. But I learned a lot just by watching my dad.
The good thing about it, our whānau supported him. My two sisters over there, myself and my wife. We all hard workers and we just got stuck into it and wanted to see it up.
We've always worked well together as a whānau, and although hard work, we achieved it, and it's something good to see and great, big achievement, especially here.
So it's actually quite practical in terms of the way the kitchen's laid out.
Not always. You have to simplify your whole idea of food and how you present it. And that's probably what Anthony had in mind. It was more for his father to relax him, not to be a chore. So yes, it's perfect in that way.
For Anthony, designing this house on Motihi was a gift to his father, and a way for him to remain connected to his whānau land despite living on the other side of the globe. For Aubrey and Anthony Hoete, the DIY nature of the project presented its own opportunities and challenges. Must have been a real mission to get both to the island and to set it in place too.
To deliver anywhere in Aotearoa would be our mission.
And how is it actually held up? Is there bolts up there or something?
It's held by a 200 by 100 millimetre steel beam, like a big hook, set at the right degree angle, and that's it. It's held by the main roof rafters.
And all the services are concealed in that
They're concealed in that beam, the water flow and the power flow and all that. And I could stand on there and probably wouldn't move it just a couple of millimetres.
So this is the keel of the waka, eh?
Yeah, this is the concrete structure of the waka. It was quite a task putting this structure of this size on any island because of its work input. It was all manually poured by hand with buckets of wet concrete and pour it down into the structure. We had a cardboard tube to form the inner side profile, and we had ply sheets on the outside to give it this curved shape.
So this is one of the two doors that you asked for?
Yeah, these are one of the two doors. So we have a door now. We would just drop the pin in there to give it a locking position.
Really simple.
And allows the airflow to go right through the house without any difficulty.
And this is quite low technology construction?
Very low tech door, very low cost door. Simple, from my point of view, it was quite simple to build.
Yeah. And pivoting in the middle, it doesn't put stress on anything.
And it's a nice spot for early morning cup of tea or cup of coffee looking out towards the east on the sunrise on the horizon.
Yeah, so you can either be quite cosy or you can keep your distance.
Yeah. Keep your privacy on this side of the wall without the partner knowing what's happening.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
For this whare, the link to the past doesn't lie in its architectural design. The connection is to the whenua on which the whare stands and the whānau who occupy it.
Ki te kōrero, hea pēne tū tō mātou whare muri o mātou. Ko te take, mō ngā whenua. Mō ngā whenua, mō tātou tīpuna. Kia ora.
There's something very special in a father and son building on land that's remained in their whānau and hapu for 1,000 years. It's a structure that reinforces the Hoete connection to their tūranga waiwai, a bond that ties this unique whare to this piece of land. At Motihi Island, the Hoete family continue to build on land their whānau have owned for generations. Here at Tarawera, there's an architect who doesn't have those same connections to the whenua, but he's making real connections to this place and a home he's designed and built for himself.
My family came from Holland, emigrated out when I was about 5 years old back in the early 60s. And a lot of people ask me if I have any Māori descent when they see the house, and what I say to them is, unless a waka went astray, it's pretty unlikely. You know, I do have a real attachment with New Zealand. I mean, I've been back to Holland a few times, and although it's a beautiful country as well, it's What I really miss there is the wilderness, that wilderness feel, and I mean, that's why I love the bush here so much, it just feels like jungle, it feels wild and fresh. That sort of whare form was quite powerful, and really, in terms of Māori architecture, it's a powerful form, and I use that really to create the entrance to the house, because the occasion of entry is always one of the most important elements in architecture.
The Rotorua area has been a magnet for foreigners for centuries. Most tourists pass through and move on with a few souvenirs to show for their time. For the architect of Dutch descent who designed this house, it's not about what he can take from this place, but what he can create here.
Coming from a different country and just trying to find some sort of attachment to the new land that you're in. And I think, over time, you just develop a relationship with the environment and the history and what makes, Aotearoa special. I always try to put some sort of indigenous element into the house. And I remember one house I worked on where I did that, and the clients weren't aware that I did that, but it wasn't until later on I had some feedback from them, and somebody went into the house and said, there's something about this house, it's very, they sort of said Polynesian. And it wasn't until somebody else told the client that they sort of took a second look and then they realised that it was. So, I think for a lot of people, if you say you're going to design them a Māori house, they probably get a little bit frightened. But if you do it sort of subtly and don't tell them, I think they sort of, they can embrace it as time goes on. I've been working on the house for like 25 years now, so it's a long time frame, and your ideas sort of grow and mature as you go through, and so it's a good way to sort of express those ideas. But when you say to people that you are, into Māori architecture, they think everything's made out of raupo and panga. And it's nice to show that you can do something that looks very contemporary, but the essence of it is still Māori in terms of the philosophy behind it and the relationship with the environment. And I think they do. I think a lot of people probably don't realise that you can do something like this.
As well as the Māori architectural principles that Fred Stevens has adopted in the creation of his new home, there's another strong design element that informs this house: the architecture of the Greek islands, especially Santorini.
When I first started designing the house, I was doing my third year of architecture at Victoria, and it happened to be 1986, which was 100 years on from the eruption of Mount Tarawera. So I remember walking through the museum in Wellington, and they had a lot of photos of the eruption and the history, and I think all those things came together. And I'd just been to the Greek islands, to Santorini, so all those things certainly influenced it, and it was really just putting everything together into a nice little package. And I think the white houses Santorini are just magnificent on top of the caldera, and there's a lot of similarities with the volcanic origins of Santorini and the mountain here, Tarawera. And the white actually, what I'm working with is sort of that sort of whare form, so the white really helps to express that form of the building.
In his house at Tarawera, Fred Stevens is adding his voice to an architectural dialogue that's singular and unique to this whenua. This instinct to create a language of our own that incorporates a distinctive Māori point of view is one that drives a growing number of contemporary architects. The architect for this kainga describes it as a dialogue between the wairu of the Hokianga Harbour and the forces of nature. It's a design that takes seriously its contributions both to the site and to the spirit of the Hokianga. The Wishart House in Omapere was designed in 1996 by renowned architect Rewi Thompson for his clients John and Pip Wishart.
He seems so sensitive to the environment, and as well as solving the practical problems, he had the feeling for the place.
Yes, I think that if you asked a super-duper urban person here, they might have been a bit lost, actually. I know Rewi could do super-duper urban, but it's just the philosophy behind it, and I think he was right on.
Kia ora, Lou.
Kia ora, Rewi.
Hey, how are you going?
Kia ora, kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora.
Arrived through the dramatic entrance.
Welcome to the Hokianga.
Yeah, kia ora, kia ora. Pretty strong palisade elements coming through here.
Yeah, that's all part of the entranceway, the welcome into the Hokianga, not so much the house, and the idea of
Tāne Mahuta, timber.
Yeah, so a strong sense of informality in the single space.
Oh, what do you expect from them? This is the Hokianga. You leave all those other things back in Auckland and you come here to enjoy the beauty of the Hokianga.
You're a strong tent-style feeling in the roof.
Yeah, I think we wanted to create a sort of a single space, say like a whare, and that just one big roof, that so that you knew you were everyone was under the same roof in terms of manaki and support.
Real family feel to the place, really accepting of multiple numbers, shrinking, growing size groups.
That's right, and again, it's leaving those sort of ideas of suburbia back in the city and living as a family unit, so coming together, you know, as a whānau. Obviously you need areas which are private.
Yep.
Well, that's not, but the overall concept is one of a single space, you know, and the idea of the roof becomes an idea of like a korowai, cloaking and protecting and sheltering the family.
A place that you really like to be in a storm as much as fine weather too.
Well, that's right. I think one of the issues of the clients like about this place was the natural forces that existed on the site. And what we try to do, represent that in the architecture itself, is talk about some of those forces. So you can see how the house is sort of slightly buckled or skewed to actually to dramatise those forces, and also the extensive use of timber. So when that sort of greys off, it's very similar to the bark on the manuka. As well as you can see with the some of the structural steel work and the bracing that's going on, that not to resist the whitimatea, the wind, the god of the wind, but to actually celebrate the forces. So what you've got here is a sort of a, if you like, we're standing right in the middle, if you like, of the forces and the tensions of the harbour itself.
Celebrating the maunga, celebrating the dunes, and of course, you know, this really historic harbour. You can always imagine the wind coming and going, following the contour of the manuka or the hill, and the weatherboards appear to be responding in a similar way. I
think it's all those ideas, and one can imagine that maybe once upon a time the walls were all straight, but over time the weather and the wind and the rain and the site itself is slowly taken over charge and sort of starts to sort of play with the house.
It's come out sort of very much the way we visualised and felt about it right from the beginning.
The odd local person said, is that the Bendy house that you live in?
Yeah, occasionally they approach the place and say, your garage looks really funny, and then they get the message of the garage, the weatherboarding on the garage reflecting the strata and the rock. It's interesting to see what their reactions are, and usually it's to walk over to the big front windows and go, wow.
As New Zealanders, I think we have these fantastic sites, you know, of our country, and yet sometimes the architecture doesn't really reflect the true qualities of their place. And the power of the Hokianga, I guess, it's got all these natural qualities to it, so making sure that whatever we designed here, it was going to celebrate and acknowledge all these different types of landscapes.
Rewi's design is a celebration of the Hokianga. It's a unique statement and one which I believe is really successful. Here at Orake overlooking Auckland City, the local hapu have had roots to this land for centuries. The original Kainga was situated down by the beach.
Although our whare were sort of shanties, our floor was dirt floor. Many people down there didn't have the proper facilities and washing, but lifestyle down there was good. The showers down there, the bathing sheds were a congregation place for us, where our mothers did the washing. Couldn't care less if people wanted to get changed in there. Once they commandeered the 4 showers, 2 in the women's and 2 in the men's, that's where they stayed with their washboards and just washed their clothes all day until they got them dry.
In the 1950s, the pa was burnt down and hapu members were moved up the hill towards Bastion Point. Living on the edge of an expanding city heavily impacted on Ngāti Whātua.
During the eviction from down the bottom, our whare, Te Purua Tāmaki, was dismantled and packaged for it to come up to here on the land here. Although it was only a small whare, the government promised, and that was one of the lures to get my people to move from down there, that we will, well, after we moved, the government said that the whare mysteriously burnt, Then they decided that, talking to the council, they should be a marae put onto the spot where our marae was, but it was going to be an urban marae. And this is where Bastion Point started, was through the building of this place. We said it's on our whenua. This land was designated for Te Purua Tāmaki. This should not be an urban marae, but it was going to be the thing for the Auckland City Council, So we were going to be controlled by all of these other people other than ourselves. So we started to protest.
The battle with the government for ownership of their lands was protracted and painful. Finally, by the late 1980s, Ngāti Whātua had begun to make progress with the Waitangi Tribunal hearings. In the middle of this tumultuous period, Tumutumu Whenua Meeting House was being constructed as part of a national marae. It took 7 years to complete and was finally opened in 1972.
We went through a time in Ngāti Whātua when there was no Ngāti Whātua stylised, and it wasn't until some carvings came up out of the swamp. And when they brought them out, they were black, and I think we just copied them. They were the paru, the mud got into them, and they look quite unique. This land, when it was all forested, and the Waitakere was famous for the kahu pōkere, there's this Johnny Black Hawk. Its territorial would have been pretty large, and like more, we probably made them extinct as well.
But even with progress on the land front, this hapu still faced challenges. In 1990, the wharenui was tragically damaged by fire.
It damaged, it took about 5-6 mil of the carving, all the detail. It was very sad to see them all charcoaled. We waited for a while, and we decided we'll come in and clean the charcoal. We were told to bury them, their mate. He says, no, we'll hide them away. So we cleaned them up as best as we could. We made a decision that we will start seeing how good they might come up by just taking a little bit more darkness off them and sanding them and just polish them or varnish them, whatever, stain them, whatever it came up, we'll have a look at them. He had 7 of them done, and so we put it down the carving shed, done the carving shed up, took all the soot out and lined them up, and all of our old people, so they started crying, so we knew, they weren't going to argue about putting them back in here. But, we're 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times better off than what we were. We can stand on our whenua and say, I belong, it belongs, E tūtoi te whenua e whatungaranga te tangata, and all of those things are important to me.
Today, this kainga in the heart of the city survives thanks to the determination of Ngāti Whātua to hold on to their ancestral lands.
We're proud of it. My people are very proud of Tumutumu Whenua and being able to maintain it, being able to have their wharekai, and to greet people here, to have their tangiana, to have their wānanga, to have their fights. Two things on the marae, there's politics and there's Māori tics, So for me, it's a place of tangi. It's a place of joy, you know. This marae is used nearly every day of the year. And land, you know, our children, you know, and our mokopunas will never have to go through the things that we did.
Kainga can take many forms, from our personal dwellings to the land we're connected to beneath our feet. But it's also about the things we build on the whenua. From wood and metal and glass and aroha, we create the structures that connect us to our past and to our futures.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.